Hello everyone. I'm here at the Missouri Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, otherwise known as MCDHH. I'm Opeoluwa Sotonwa. I'm the Executive Director here. This program is entitled Coffee Chat. The purpose of this is to be bringing in different community members that represent the deaf and hard of hearing community or other Missourians to come in and chat with us on different issues. We feel like this is going to be very important to help us to connect to the community with all of the issues that are going on, so we can find creative ways to resolve some of the issues that come up periodically. Today I have somebody with me who is well known here in Missouri. He is a product of the state of Missouri, and everything about him is just so impressive. His name is Ernest Garrett III. He is Superintendent of the Missouri School for the Deaf. Welcome, Ernest. Thank you. Really, I'm happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk to you over coffee and talk about the issues of the day. My first question for you then is, I see all of the work that you're doing for the deaf community. Now, what is your opinion on the state of deaf education in Missouri? Could you share that with our audience? Sure, I think there are many issues. I think that where we are starting is on a positive note. Looking at where I began in deaf education, there are laws that allowed me to have access to a free and appropriate public education. And I think that is one plus that gives incentives for school districts to realize that educating the deaf, or rather educating all students with a disability, should be free and appropriate. So our taxpayers' dollars should be used for that purpose. That is an important part of public education and students with disabilities. Now, specifically to deaf education, I'm a product of the system of deaf education in Missouri. I received my pre-kindergarten through 12th grade education from a public school with support from Special School District of St. Louis County, which was a mainstreaming program. There I was exposed at a young age to one way of educating the deaf, which was through mainstreaming. And there are others. Now that I'm in my capacity as superintendent of a school for a deaf residential school, I see a variety of other ways of educating deaf students. They are all tasked with giving opportunities to access the curriculum for students. And that is important. Unfortunately, though, some problems that we've had in the past are still alive today. And access to the curriculum, or access to language, from infancy until they are ready to enter school is still an ongoing issue. Part of that involves, for example, early identification of a hearing loss. And we know that sometimes parents go through a grieving process, and sometimes that gets in the way of important decisions that need to be made about giving a child access to language. And often parents are in a unique situation with a baby who's identified as being deaf, and the language of the parents is through spoken communication. So it's easy for that to become a struggle or an issue. And I think that leads to another positive about the current state of deaf education. Like I explained about my educational experience growing up in a mainstream setting, now I'm a working adult, so obviously that way of education worked for me. I am now superintendent of the School for the Deaf, so that's a great testament to the success of education for me. And so I use my position to try to influence positive educational outcomes for our deaf and hard of hearing students at the Missouri School for the Deaf. From my position as superintendent, I have access to other leaders in education in Missouri and can see what they're doing to serve deaf and hard of hearing students. And then in addition, we also have the Commission's Executive Director, which is you, who is in a unique position from a public policy perspective to have a positive impact on the outcomes of deaf and hard of hearing students. So I believe that our collaboration is a great benefit to deaf and hard of hearing children. Thank you. Your personal story of how you grew up and benefited from a free and appropriate public education here in Missouri. We appreciate that story. That can show deaf children can become successful as they grow too. I was looking at the new state budget that's been proposed by Governor Eric Greitens and the increase in several $1 million to special education. I really appreciate and am grateful that he recognizes the need for special education in Missouri. What I've seen in Missouri so far is that we seem to be in the lead on many different things. And even though we may not be as rich as other states, we have put in great efforts and resources and wise spending to provide children with the tools and resources they need to succeed. I agree. Again, I think that is another positive from the perspective of deaf education in Missouri. Our state government and state agency, the Department of Education, are more and more sensitive to the needs of deaf and hard of hearing students. So from that perspective, we are on their radar, which is important. We have allies in the legislature that not only have an interest to see deaf and hard of hearing children succeed, but also make sure that local education agencies and the School for the Deaf, who serve deaf students and the individuals who work with them, have the resources they need. That's a big support that I've gotten as superintendent of MSD, that help from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And I've been able to tie that to my strategic planning and to make improvements to our schools. I'm sure you're aware that MSD has a new strategic plan and will function under a new mission and vision statement and motto. Our motto used to be first choice, not last resort. Again, first choice, not last resort. So in other words, typically students have been placed at the Missouri School for the Deaf as a last resort after they have failed many times in other placements. And that's a very negative perception that we don't want. So I want us to change that mindset. MSD is really in a position that we can educate all students who are deaf or hard of hearing, regardless of their signing ability. We will respect all students. We're not in the position where we can decide that a student isn't really a good fit for our school and look down on them. That is a form of oppression that we are already getting from the outside world, and MSD does not want to promote that. So people are starting to realize that MSD can be used as a resource. And that's a big part of what our outreach department does, too, to increase the visibility of our programs and services and be able to make them stronger. Now, we are not perfect. We have some practices that may need some updating to reflect the 21st century practices. We have a lot of work to do, but as superintendent, I'm passionate about keeping us viable so that MSD stays around for a long time. Thank you for that answer. That's an interesting story that kind of leads me to another question that I have regarding a few bills that have been filed with the legislature. One of those is in regards to language assessment. We want to be shown that every child, deaf or hard of hearing, has language, or show how much delay they have. You said that some parents look at MSD as a last resort instead of as their first choice. Some of those parents may not have access to the right resources and information about the different options. Maybe they only know the options that have been offered to them by doctors and audiologists who may tell them what to do. Those professionals from the medical community may give them information, but at the same time, they may not be offering every option that is available to them. So I think this bill, which had many community members' support, the community was able to convince Senator Walsh to sponsor Senate Bill 51. And on the House side, Representative Travis Fitzwater, who represents Callaway County, where MSD is located, to file House Bill 481. Both bills are the same, or almost the same. They have the same concept, but maybe worded just a little differently. But all in all, the concept is the same. But it is something to think about when sending kids to MSD. Sometimes they already have a language delay, and it takes time to catch up. Those kids need something to help them with the acquisition of language, and their parents need to know the various resources too. What do you think of that bill? Or what is your opinion on it? Sure, but let me go back and clarify something about our motto. The motto that I mentioned earlier was our old motto. It's been replaced with our new motto, Education Without Limits. That's really connected to the legislative action around language assessment. Those two are tied together. So Education Without Limits means we're actively working collaboratively to break down barriers to access language for deaf and hard of hearing students, children, and babies. Language assessment is a good step in the right direction for that purpose. So really, as superintendent, and also as my role as MCDHH commissioner, I'm really happy to see that effort and using my seat on the commission as a voice for what we can make happen. So, you're right. We do get students who are language delayed, but that doesn't happen to only us. There are other places where students' access to education is the same. It's not only at the School for the Deaf. But we need to figure out a way, a systematic way to address that. Language assessment is the right step. The Commission, MCDHH, has an interest to provide the right services to everyone in Missouri who is deaf or hard of hearing. And we are not in a position to say that we support one method or another. And as a state agency, we need to work to make sure that we balance that and respect parents' decisions, which is very important. In Missouri, we value parents' rights. We don't want to take away any of their rights. I've been getting numerous emails about this bill. I have to ask people first if they've actually read the bill. Some of them haven't read it, and they're just depending on word of mouth, saying that this bill will force parents to use ASL, American Sign Language, or another language method. The key word is how we are able to measure deaf children's language milestones here in Missouri. So what do we need to do to help parents understand where their child is currently and going forward, so they don't find out that information until much later when it's too late? The child then doesn't have the right foundation to be able to succeed. That's why I think this bill is okay. Deaf community members were really able to persuade their legislators to file the bill, and we'll be watching to be sure that the legislator takes some good action on it and be sure that it passes and becomes law. Okay, another question that I have for you, and I'd like you to share with our audience, is what improvements to programs and services has MSD been working on? Like you mentioned, you've been working on that, and if you could expand on that so the community members get an understanding of them and can work collaboratively with you to help. Sure, I'm happy to do that. Missouri School for the Deaf was established in 1851. It's been around for 165 years now, and we recognize now, more than ever, that now is the right time to make positive change in the education of our deaf and hard of hearing students. We have to take on a huge ambition to really look at our strategic plan as a way to set a structure for the direction of MSD in the best interest of its students. That doesn't mean that I simply pull that out of the air and decide on something. It's been a process that has allowed for community engagement. When I first came to MSD as superintendent, I was aware of the school, even though I was from a mainstream public school, and I'd heard many different things from the community. From seeing the data from the State Department of Education, I still feel there's an opportunity to provide leadership to have a positive growth in the school. So I was happy to take on that role. Well, when you set new priorities, sometimes it can be challenging for people who are used to the status quo and want things to remain the same. Because it's a change in behavior for all to align with the goals. And really, that's a separate issue for another day. But for MSD, our plan for the future is that we really want to do some things. First, we want to strengthen our academic programs, curriculum, assessment, and instructional practices. We want them to look like best practices in the 21st century, or at least in Missouri. So the teachers we have, the support staff, do hard work with our students. I'm always grateful for what they do because teaching is not an easy job. I taught at the university level for 7 years before moving back to Missouri. So I do have some teaching experience, and it's not easy. And with the generation that we are faced with today, it's different than the ones we've had before. If you study child theory, there are some patterns, but the world we live in is increasingly diverse, increasingly technologically sophisticated, so how children learn and the models for how to teach them have to evolve. So I want to be sure that we at MSD are using all the available practices that will cause positive educational outcomes for our students. Speaking of programs, our vocational program is a growth opportunity right there. Not all students will graduate and go on to college, which is fine. We want them to graduate having the skills to work. Not only the work skills, but also the social and emotional skills to interact with their coworkers. You know, it's one thing to be able to get a job, which is fine, but to be able to keep a job, that's what's so important. And that requires certain skills. And so we have to build the students' skills and build their capacity for success as individuals and as future contributing members of society, tax-paying members of society. The vocational program is a big part of that. Then, on the academic side, with diverse students with diverse interests. Student needs drive student services. So when we look at students and we try to look at them all needing the same thing, it's just not true. You have to go back to the IEP, which stands for Individual Education Program. I don't adopt the theory that one size fits all. We have to do our best to create programming that is based on the IEP for that student and what's in their best interest. Part of that, especially for our high schoolers, is transitional planning. Transitioning for the world after high school. So again, that goes back to the vocational skills that we are building. And those on the academic track and plan to go on to college, making sure they have access to high-quality curriculum in math, English, and science concepts that will make them stronger candidates for college. So our job is not finished. As long as I still have breath in me, my job is not finished. So I use my position to raise the bar so we don't do our students a disservice. If the goal for people with a disability in general, and specifically deaf or hard of hearing people, is actually equality, then we have to make sure our practices for educating them is equal. The same as what other hearing students can expect. Deaf or hard of hearing students deserve the best, period. Thank you. I can see your strategic plan that you have in the back of your mind that students must have a good foundation for future leaders in the deaf and hard of hearing community. And that's very important. We often emphasize education. But is that just in theory? And so what do we practice? Sometimes we think that something is appropriate for hearing children, and they learn along with their parents. But for deaf kids who struggle to communicate at home, they're not going to acquire that language at home. So with that kind of strategic plan that you have in place, means that you can provide an appropriate place, an environment where they can learn more than just theory, but that actually prepares them for the community, be a community member in the future. And I'd like to add something about the academic side. Again, I mentioned that MSD is a residential school for the deaf. We have students 24/7. So when they finish the academics, the learning doesn't stop. Part of our strategic plan involves student life. They have a big role to play in that. There's the perception that the residential advisors are, in my opinion, that they are crucial to educating our students. Academics is one thing, and it's a top priority, but the residential advisors play a big role in that. And we have many opportunities to expose the students after school hours, where some of our students are staying with us instead of going home. Like you mentioned, if they were at home, they wouldn't be able to communicate. And so they don't have access to that incidental learning. It's not happening there at home for them. So through our residential life program, we have activities with an educational focus, which is an important piece to expose them to the outside community, like going to the store, figuring a budget, paying for things, how to save money, how to spend money wisely, things such as that. Skills that, like I said, the key word being skills. It's not only something that they're learning in the classroom, but those skills that they're learning outside of the classroom. They're needing interaction with language peers, which is very important. So when we consider the benefits of MSD, which are many, myself as superintendent advocate a full, rich number of options for our deaf and hard of hearing students. So if they come to MSD, we find the right option for the students There's so much that we can offer. We have the flexibility to create programs as well. The interaction is important for their self-confidence. Because of that self-confidence, it's needed to develop their confidence in school and in social interactions, and to be able to find and keep a job, and to get into college and be successful. So it's very important that MSD has value to set a foundation for those kids that leads to successful academic and employment outcomes. I've been impressed with the story that you've shared with us and to the community. That really helps me understand where MSD is currently and what they're doing to improve the things that are needed for the deaf community in general. Do you have any more advice or encouragement for our community on how they can support MSD or what they can do to get involved in the education and what their role is in that? I know sometimes people are at home and don't know what to do, and parents face that same thing as well. I'm sure the new Commissioner of Education, Dr. Margie Van Dieven, has hosted some town hall meetings throughout the state of Missouri. What would be really nice is to see the deaf and hard of hearing community represented at those town hall meetings. That would be an opportunity for us to have a voice. And so they can see what the community's concerns are regarding education of deaf and hard of hearing students. We have a small population, and the deaf and hard of hearing community needs to be more visible and be able to go to those town hall meetings and just be able to be there and have a voice. Stand up and speak at those and allow those people to know what those needs are from the perspective of a deaf and hard of hearing person. They do listen to all of the concerns. The reason they host those kind of events in the first place is to get input from the community. So if there's no deaf people there, where are they going to get that input? So that's an important point I want to make. But also serving leadership roles. There's different councils, boards, through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, that if we had someone deaf or hard of hearing on that, we would keep issues that are impacting deaf and hard of hearing people on the forefront of their minds of the people who have decision-making authority. And I always appreciate the work of MCDHH to keep us visible. But the community themselves have a huge part of that. Visibility within the legislative process and the Educational Budget Committee. Going to testify, there are many opportunities. I think sometimes people feel that they don't matter and nobody's going to listen to them. But actually, you have the power of living in a democratic society. And as such, as a taxpayer in a democratic society, you have a voice. And sometimes you just have to not be afraid to speak out. Yes, I agree with you. And I'd like to add a little more to that. Sometimes we feel that there's a big system and we don't know how to get involved with it. And if you don't get involved, you can't benefit the system. People don't know how to get involved. And if the deaf and hard of hearing community doesn't get involved with the system and meeting with their legislators and speaking to them and getting involved in that process, then we're going to be the last people to be remembered. So how to avoid that is encouraging the deaf and hard of hearing community to get involved. Sometimes they may want some information on different commission vacancies and things such as that. So please just let me know what your interest is, and I can see what I can do to find something that will fit your interests. And thank you from the Missouri Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. Thank you for watching our coffee chat. This is our first one, our first episode, and so I want to thank Mr. Garrett for joining us and for sharing all of his stories. I know a lot of people are at home watching and have learned a lot and understand more about what's going on at the Missouri School for the Deaf. So thank you. And I hope to see you all again next time on the next episode.